Hello guys, and welcome to this new Python tutorial. Today we are going to talk about lists and dictionaries comprehension. List comprehension is used to create a new list based on the values of an existing list faster and in one line of code. It is faster than processing a list using the for loop. Its syntax is as the following. We have the square brackets, we write our expression, we iterate using the for loop, and we add a condition. Date comprehension is also used for transforming one dictionary into another dictionary. Its syntax is we open the curly brackets, we use the key value pair for a variable in an iterable. To understand that, we are going to start by list comprehension. For example, assume that you have a list. So create list 1. It is an empty list. And you want to create, for example, for element in, let's say, range 10, you want to create the square root of the elements and you want to append them to the list. So you want to create a list of the square values for the element presented in the list for range 10. What you can do is use the list 1 dot append and you write element square, right? Then you are going to implement, you got to print, your list. Okay, so we have 0, 1, 4, 9, 16, etc. With list comprehension, as we have said here, expression for item in iterable if condition. So for example, let's say we want to create this list. Okay, so we write list 2, we open the square brackets, we write our expression, so element square, okay, for element in range 10. Okay, and if we want to print that, we get our list. It is the same. Okay, so look at here, we have 1, 2 lines of code, and here we have only one line of code. What if we want to create, so we call it list 3, and we want to create a list which contains the square root of the elements, but only with the square roots that are even. So we have, for example, the 4, 16, 36, 64. Okay, so here we have to add a condition. We have the if condition. To do so, we created list 3, call it list 3, list 3. So for element in range 10, so we call it if, so element square root is even, so we use the modulus 2, right, equals to 0, we append. All right, else pass. Okay, we run that, name element, name element, so we have 0, 4, 16, 36, 64. So we have here 4 lines or 5 lines of code. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's assume that we can omit this one. So we have 3 lines. But we using the list comprehension, we just write list, for example, squared equals to, we set our expression, it is the square roots, element square, the iterable for element. We said range 10, so this is our existing list, and we add the condition. If we said element is an even modulus 2 equals to 0, right? And we are going to implement that list squared. Okay, so it is the same. As you see here, we have only one line of code, and we did not use the 3 lines of code. Okay, so it is faster, the syntax is simpler. I mean, you can understand exactly what we have did in here, and you will gain time. Okay, so this is one example for list comprehension. Let's say, for example, we want to use it using strings. Okay, so we create, for example, list string. Okay, we call it, for example, 1, 2, for example, 3, 4. Okay, for example, we want to create a list. Okay, we call it list 4. Okay, which contains the strings that contain the letter O. Okay, so we write our expression. So element, or how to call it, noun or number. Okay, number 4, number in list string. Okay, if, let's say, O in number, right? And we print list 4. So here we say our expression is the number, our iterable is for the number in our list, if the number contains in its elements the letter O. So we have 1, 2, and 4. 3, 5, 6 are excluded. Okay, and for example, we use not in number, so we'll get the remaining 3, 5, and 6. Okay, we can also use that, for example, if we want to use 2 for loops. Okay, so we have nested for loop. We create, for example, vector 1 contains 1, 2. Okay, vector 2 which contains 3 and 4. Okay, and we want to create the pairs, so we have 1, 3, 1, 4. Okay, 2, 3, 2, 4, for example. So to do that, we have to write, we have to create, for example, pairs. Okay, we call it pairs equals to, for example, x and y, let's say coordinates or pairs for x in vector 1. We don't write and, we add another for loop for y in vector 2. Okay, so we have created pairs, the possible pairs between these two vectors. So we have 1, 3, 1, 4, 2, 3, 2, 4. Okay, so nested for loops can be used for list comprehension. So we have 4x in vector 1 and for y in vector 2. Okay, so we have 2 iterables in here. We can also use, for example, let's say 2 if statements. So we can use multiple if conditions. So for example, if we want to create the multiplication or the square roots of the numbers which are even, and for example they are multiplication of 10. Okay, let's say if we can find that. So we create another list. So list double condition equals to, for example, element, okay, for element in range, let's say 50, for example, I don't know, 50, if this element is even. Okay, so if element is even, if element, so element, sorry, if element is multiplication of 10. Okay, right. So we have 0, 10, 20, 30, 40. If we omit this one, okay, so we'll have all the square numbers. Okay, so we have from 0 to 48. Okay, sorry, I didn't write the square. Okay, the square, sorry. So for element, okay, so we have 0, 100, 400, 900. These are the square roots that are even. So if we sorry, the square numbers, not the squares. So if we add our condition, so we'll have 0, 100, 400, 900, and 1600. Okay, so here we use list double condition. We use two conditions. Here we use two for loops. Here we work with strings, and here we also write our expression, the for the iterable and our condition. Okay, with our condition. So this is for the list comprehension. For the Dict comprehension is also the same thing. Let's say we create a dictionary, we call it Dict1 equals to, for example, sorry, so 1, let's say 2, 3, for example, and 4. Okay, so this is our dictionary. We want to create also the square roots of the not the square roots, the square numbers of this number. So we have 1, 4, 9, 16. To do that, we can use the for using the update or the method that we are using to add elements to our dictionary. So for element in Dict1, for example, dot, let's say dot values. Okay, we replace Dict1. Okay, for example, or let's say for key value. Okay, for key value in Dict1 dot items. Okay, so we write Dict1 str key is equals to the value, for example, square. Okay, run, and if we print Dict1, we will get 1, 2, 3, and 4. So these are the square roots of the numbers. Okay, Dict1 is replaced by this dictionary. Using the dict comprehension, we can write directly dict1, okay, squared equals to, we create the dictionary, okay. We said that we write the key value pair, okay, for, let's say, key value in dict1 dot items. So here, for example, I have to change it, okay, run that, because if we don't try that, it will create this dictionary. It will directly use this one, okay. So here we write square root dot items, and it is a function. Run. So if you print dict1, this is dict1 and this is dict square, it will give us the first one, okay. So here, for example, if we add the condition, it will be like the first one. We have one line of code, but in here we only use one line of code, okay. So this is for the dictionaries comprehension. We use the key value pair and we write our statement for an iterable in so we have here our iterable and we add conditions if we want, okay. So this is all for the list and date comprehension. I hope that you have learned new things. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.